Welcome to Felixstowe in Suffolk. Many of you may know Felixstowe as a major container point port, and there's not much evidence here of major containers, but this is because we're on the town side of the, as opposed to the port side of Felixstowe, and I'm here with Paul Bergin. Paul, the MD of the Public Safety Group for Sopra Steria. Wonderful to be here with you here in Suffolk, Paul. We've just had an excellent cup of tea and a sausage sandwich in this very fine cafe, and we're now going to have a walk down the river and talk about all things policing. So, your background, Paul. You've had a career in technology. Most recently, prior to your being the MD of the Public Safety Group at Sopra Steria, you were the Chief Technology Officer. So I'm very interested to understand more about the transition that there's been from focusing on the technology, as I would expect a Chief Technology Officer to do, through to then being the MD of the wider Public Safety Group.
Yeah, it's I was fortunate, I guess, at the slightly different level to look after technology across aerospace, defence and security at Sopra Steria, and public safety falls into that group. And my remit, I guess, was to look broader than just technology and look at how real product and innovation really affects our customers and how to understand what the markets really need from us and set up a roadmap to get new IP, new intellectual property into the business and to increase our revenues that way. And I found that very enjoyable. Had its challenges, of course, and how do we really get technology working for us? I think that takes away from the old idea of trying to just sell technology, but selling what problems we're trying to solve with technology and trying to get that concept across.
So it's not just technology for technology's sake. It's understanding the wider challenges, issues that there are, making sure that the technology gets used in the way in which it's most useful.
Well, yes, it has to bring benefit to customers. So I see, for example, perhaps early on and throughout my career, people bringing very fancy technology solutions to bear on a market. The market either couldn't buy them, couldn't afford them, or couldn't use them in the way they were designed. So there's no real benefit to it. And the great example of policing possibly recently is BlackBerries. In the 90s, they were great desk fillers, door stoppers. They're in desktop drawers all over the place, and the ability to actually get the benefit wasn't fully realised. If you go to the conversation around digital transformation, a great buzzword, but not often as well understood, we can make technology better. That's the digital side of an axis. And we can transform how we work. And the ideal there is we have BlackBerries, but we can actually monetize them, can actually make any use for them. So, and also if you use a BlackBerry, it's better to go back to a connected back office system. So let's go fill in data sheets and fill in spreadsheets. So the real elegant solution would have been something that allowed you to digitize out and about in the field, but also allowed you to do the back office work at the same time and save the trip back to the office all at once. So you transform both how you work and the technology at the same time. And that would be a proper transformation where technology brings direct benefit to how you work.
And that's bringing technology to the individual. Really, the last year has been quite a significant challenge in doing that. Quite some changes very quickly in making sure that the technology is available to those wherever they're working through the pandemic.
Absolutely, and that's where the challenge was: laptops, connectivity, all those kind of things. The video technology has been really, really important. And we had our challenges at Sopra Steria with some of the very large sensitive imagery running. Things like paying the police, for example, at the Met Police, we have large contracts doing that. How do we get all our workers in our call centres working at home safely very quickly? And of course, police customers around the country have a very similar thing too, to make their own challenges, keep working safely in different environments.
Those who are watching this video may not be all be familiar with the range of services that Sopra Steria provides to policing. Well, not just policing, but also the wider sort of public safety side. So why don't you run through for us the range of products and services that Sopra Steria provides to policing?
Sure. Well, in policing in the UK, we sell through our joint venture SSCL. We sell BPO services for HR and payroll for the Met and recruitment and vetting and such like. We provide 70% of the UK police forces with our sworn command and control, digital interview recording at a couple of large customers, and also Oracle OCI cloud migration at the Cleveland Police. But there's other streams of work with Sopra Steria that are adjacent. I guess things that our police customers wouldn't recognise they're very close are the UK VI contract in our governance sector, where we process the visa immigration service. Passport service, we run that for them. We pay every nurse in the NHS through our NHS SBS joint venture. So a variety of very large government and public sector contracts related that are secure and digitally transformed as well.
So, and indeed there's a number of terms there that you've used where I will freely admit not to being a technology buff, and therefore don't always know the different terms. But the ones that I'm particularly going to pick on there are you've mentioned the in broad terms HR back office work that you do for the Metropolitan Police and others. Shall we just turn up here, because this looks as if we're about to get closed off on that particular part of the footpath. So the work that you do for the Metropolitan Police, where you have quite a team, I think, in southern Wales that's looking after supporting the Met in things like security clearances and salary payment and the like, and also the storm side, where 70% of forces, as you've mentioned, in the UK use the sort of storm system, and in a number of cases have been doing so for many a year.
Yes, it's and with the SSCL joint venture, that's Sopra Steria SSCL joint venture, it's been a long-going contract with Metropolitan Police, you say, delivered in South Wales, vetting and back office payments, the PSOC it's called. Can't fully remember what the acronym stands for, I'm afraid.
There's so many acronyms. There's so many acronyms.
And there's a great team at SES. We work closely with those, and we share our information. And as we build up sort of software as a service and back office capability across the wider policing, we get a lot of support from the team over there. It's a really good team. In sort of the more frontline policing, mission critical side, as I said, Storm has been around for 25 years now. It was first installed at Grampian Police 25 years ago this April, which we're...
Grampian Police no longer exists now.
Part of Police Scotland.
Police Scotland.
So we're going to make a good bit of fuss about that this year at the Back Coast Show in October, and talk a bit about the last 25 years of command and control in general, and of course about what today and the next 25 years could look like too for frontline mission critical policing and how technology supports that.
Of course, that system, that storm system of 25 years ago, I suspect a Grampian police officer or a member of staff probably wouldn't recognise the storm system today.
I'm trying to find that story actually with perhaps the old green screen and there are some people in our team who were there when it got installed. So
really?
We're going to be looking forward to the video content of their story of how they put it in and what happened at the time.
But it's quite a story, because technology, not being somebody who works in technology, but it gives me the impression of moving and developing and changing very quickly indeed. So 25 years is more than a single lifetime, it's many lifetimes.
It is, and it's many careers too for lots of people. It's and I guess it's the new Broom story, isn't it? I've had a Broom 25 years with 6 new heads and 4 new handles. It's a similar story. So of course it's evolved, it's changed, and it's meeting needs that are very, very different from 25 years ago.
But it's also developed the trust. You know, you and Sopra Steria over those 25 years have established trust amongst your customers, not just forces, but the wider sort of public safety arena. And so although it may not be the same broom, using your new head and new broom handle analogy, it's actually still got that certificate of Sopra Steria endorsement completely running through it.
It does, and it's reassuring. The contracts we have are, they're renewed regularly. The customers we know for a very long time. Many of our team have been around with Sopra Steria for a very long time. They know Storm. Some of our team come directly from the police technology teams themselves when they leave policing and move into Sopra Steria, which is very good. So the wealth of experience of Sopra Steria is immense. And I'm really proud to be part of that team and looking after it at the moment.
that's a story of success and dependability over many a year. What about sort of new areas of development? Now, I will freely admit that my own personal areas of interest are much more going to be on, what's new, what's morning, what's coming next. Appreciating, of course, that I'm not going to press you to give away company secrets or anything of that nature. But where do you think the opportunities are in policing, not just UK perhaps, but even overseas?
I think often in policing technology, different parts of the world have gone ahead at different states, and we've had a period where the USA and the States have been quite far ahead for a period. UK ahead. Europe often lags the UK, but Europe are creeping up in terms. So I suppose the big themes we see in technology are going to be clearly cloud migration and moving from on-premises to onto cloud. We see that happening. Of course, the team at the Police Digital Service are talking about their strategy for cloud first, cloud native at 2030. So we all need to respond to that and develop the right products at the right time. We've not really seen much demand for that yet, so while one or two forces have asked occasionally for cloud first, we're still seeing as an area of potential risk that needs to be managed with policing.
So how does cloud first differ, if at all, from the concept of cloud? So where I see cloud as being that the data is stored in a place that may not be in the country of origin. So are there significant?
Shall I give you the layman's lowdown on it?
Please do, because that's you've sussed me already. I need the layman's explanation.
Like the Einstein phrase once, he said, if you can't explain to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. And I've used that through my whole career. It's a great phrase. I do like it. So you're right. Data in the cloud, we're used to that. Our mobile phones do it all the time. We store our photos in the cloud. It's on a server. Could be somewhere else, but it's somewhere, often out of the country. If it's cloud native, it's slightly different. So the software itself is on the cloud. Everything's happening on the cloud. So you don't have a server sitting on your own premises. You don't have the software, core software, and services on the premise. They'll be somewhere far away too. So you're relying fully on connectivity to get to the software and the data. And of course, in policing, being so security focused, that has to reside in the UK, having so stringent security standards. But more importantly, everything else in the control has to also be optimised for cloud as well, or most of it's on-prem anyway, on the premise. So you're going to have this sort of mishmash. So it requires a certain amount of planning, a certain amount of cohesion with the other services you're going to be using at the same time. And the right time is what we think is going to be really, really critical for this. But it does enable new things to happen though, of course, and other exciting developments now. ESN, the Remote Services Network, data at that rate to the front line for the first time is impressive. So you do see a host of possibilities around moving from incident-centric in the past, when we focus on the incident, to citizen-centric, about the citizen, needs of the citizen in the future. And much more recognition of that, how we develop what happens in control. And I guess in previous years, the X component, the bit that connects the telephone through to a call handler to a radio and the officer, that bit used to be a big important part of the control. Of course it's important, it needs to work, but we see the future of it being much more about the citizen, customer relationship management, and those kind of concepts.
So the customer, the customer relationship, the ability of the victim perhaps to access data about the case that officers are working on, the ability to understand what it is that the force is doing with the crime that one might have reported oneself, that sort of area.
Absolutely. So it comes to elements of that, elements of self-service, of course, which will help increase response times and take some effort away from the control for the less critical elements. But also the huge data pot that's generated from incidents and from what happens in a control room. We have to ask ourselves the questions: how do we manage it ethically? How do we use it responsibly? And how do we get value out of the data and drive real benefit for both the police force and the end customer, but the citizen who's either victim or member of the public who needs reassurance. I
imagine that there's an absolute wealth of data there, so the opportunity for data mining, better to understand the calls for support, for service coming in, differentiating between the urgent assistance ones and other calls, the location of the call. What about the opportunity there? Is
huge, of course. A lot of it comes down to ethics again. So there's more than enough data to replicate what we see in something like Minority Report, that great science fiction Philip K. Dick film from some years ago. So when we talk of the possibility where an officer in the future could look around a park of children playing, use facial recognition, look up database and identify what child is at most at risk of something bad happening to them or going into a life of crime, there's enough data there to model that today, and there has been for some years. The real question is, how do you use it ethically, and what do you want to happen when you decided that? See, if I said to you, Bernard, we can tell you the child in that group who's most likely to commit a crime in the next 3 years, you say, well, so what? What do we do now? Do we do anything different? Do we have the power? Do we have the will? Because we're getting into questions of politics now.
Absolutely, but huge politics and question of privacy, data privacy, and
I mean, it's a bigger question than Sopra Steria can answer. But in terms of providing the ability to ethically manage data and drive in the direction to benefit the forces KPIs, what helps them succeed with their current mission, what the PCC drives them to do, that's the things we're looking at supporting. Clearly, the opportunities for bigger questions to be answered in the future are there, but that's a question for our politicians, our leaders, and our PCC to take up.
So Sopra Steria, if I can try to put words in your mouth, and you'll push back. But so Sopra Steria isn't just a technology company, it's also a company that's looking at the ethics of data use and helping.
Yeah, we're a digital transformation company, and we're European. We move into across various European countries. We're headquartered in France, and France is our largest territory. But we work across the private sector and the public sector. We have contracts in defence, aerospace, all across government, and across some of our largest commercial and finance organisations too. But the ethics of what we do, we are a company that really believes in technology for good. And how that works for people in day-to-day life. And we have a new starting out digital practice, a consulting practice on ethics. I'm really excited about how that's going to play into policing in particular. We had some great interviews and conversations with some senior officers who are responsible for data in their organisations, responsible for ethics and sustainability. And we're really excited to see where that takes us in the coming months. So the ideas of, is your technology ethical? Is your data being looked after properly? GDPR is a thing we do, but it goes more than that, doesn't it?
Well, there's a restriction on what forces feel comfortable in using, and indeed what is legal for forces to use, and so technology, of course, very, very powerful in what it can offer, but a little bit of a sweeping statement on my part. Forces, probably those in wider public sector, are pretty small c conservative, that they want it to, in the sense that they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing, and that may lead them to move more cautiously than a private sector company that is more heavily driven by profit might do.
Yeah, that's a reasonable assumption. If you're driven to a career upon looking after people and keeping the rules of law and order, it's likely you're going to be of a more small c conservative bent. I think that's a perfectly reasonable assertion.
So how do you go about let me turn this round to how might forces and those in public safety be reassured that some of the more exciting or adventurous, that's displaying my own biases there, I fear, but the more cutting edge opportunities out there are something that can be proceeded with comfort, that the force is not, or the forces are not going to be venturing into areas that give the public cause for concern.
That's a really good question, and it's not only the technology. I think it's the responsible spending too. Clearly taxpayers don't want to see money blown on IT projects that don't deliver the benefits that we've seen in the newspapers, unfortunately, time and time again. And it's that real balance, and it's a challenging time where police forces are driven to reduce budgets, reduce harm and reduce cost all the time, and we're acutely aware of that. So my answer would be to look to partner with organisations where you can work together on what the future looks like. You can talk openly about good outcomes before we get to contracting processes and tendering processes, and also organisations that have demonstrated the ability to innovate successfully and deliver those results in other organisations of similar scale and type. Now, you can't always say we've just done it in the police before, because somebody has to go first. But organisations that have demonstrated that perhaps in other markets of similar security and similar standards, and that's probably the way to de-risk that and still get the benefit of innovation.
And sharing that learning of the journeys that other similar organisations have been through.
Absolutely.
where they have challenged and even confronted some of their concerns and found a way that they're comfortable in moving forward with.
Yeah, and sometimes the best relationships are where you've made an honest mistake in delivering something, or something's not quite right, and you work together and get on it, and between yourself and the police force you find a resolution. You end up in a much better place than had nothing gone wrong at all. It's often the way.
Can I move us now away from a discussion focusing on the technology side through to another area relating to people and staff and the way that they best work together. Now, one of the organisations mentioned on your LinkedIn profile is the Mentor 30% Club.
Oh.
Now, we were talking about this a little earlier before the camera started rolling, and there's several levels to this. So rather than me try and set it out myself, what did I just say? Tell us about the 30% Club.
Sure, 30% Club is an initiative to enable that 30% of our boards and leadership teams are comprised of women by 2030. So it's a lofty ambition, but one I really believe in, being powerful.
Nowhere near that at the moment, of
Nowhere
course.
near that, unfortunately, no. And so often in business and organisations, there are so many historical reasons why it's not been the case, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be putting a lot more effort into changing it aggressively. And on my journey to do that, because I'm a big believer in the diversity of our workforce, and I'll come on to another part of that in a moment, and as you know, something I've waxed lyrical about over our bacon, but over our sausage patty. So let's start with probably the largest underrepresented group in the workplace of women. So if we look at our reasons for this, it's historical. If we look at technology, the women weren't coming from university 30 years ago, so they're less likely to be in senior positions today. So there's two angles. There's both the right opportunities for people to succeed, but there's also differences in how men and women perceive even things like job applications, which, until you've really understood it, are so hard for usually a white middle-aged man to get their head around. And unfortunately,
we both fall into that category.
Camp. We absolutely do.
Well, actually, sorry, I'm dragging you in when I am significantly approaching my dotage.
I'll take middle age, it's fine, in the autumn of my life. So when we look at things like a job description, if typically if a guy, middle-aged white guy, looks at the job description that says must have the following 10 skills, we'd look at them and say, I can do 6 of them, I've heard of the last 3, and the last one I don't know, but I'll Google it and we'll apply. And typically, and I have to be typical here, a woman looks at it and say, I only know 3 of them at depth, so I can't apply. So often it comes down to confidence and attitude, again often generated by our environments and our attitudes to risk, again generated by our upbringings and society's expectation of men and women. So when we reframe our job description, we put it through our team and we work really hard to counter check our job descriptions, it says things like, rather than confident, it says committed. Because more women identify as being committed to work than being confident. We've got some really senior people at work who I have the utmost respect for and really look up to, who say regularly, I don't feel confident, but I feel committed. And you have to really listen to that. That's a really big statement. So if I write in a job description, committed person should have a working knowledge of the following 3, but willing to learn the other 6, that really changes the dynamic of who's going to apply. It allows more people into the organisation at different levels to even start with. That's one part of the puzzle. There's so many different parts of it. Things like putting your hands up to go for training on particular courses. Men are more likely to volunteer for things. Women think it looks like I'm showing off, so they'll put their hand down. So we have to really address those multiple issues, as well as making the options available. Of course, nobody's suggesting that we artificially put women into positions of leadership or on boards where they're not capable or don't want to, and artificially do that. That's not right either. Best person for the job is still always the rule, but the opportunity should be created to allow more people to actually access those roles and access.
Again, when speaking earlier about this, we looked beyond the gender constraints on mindset, if I can put it that way, that extends to other styles of working, or other, what was the term you used?
Neurodiversity.
I'm going to have to learn that term.
I'll send it to you. I'll send you a link.
I need to learn the term neurodiversity, because I think this is it's such a fascinating area, and actually is a sort of has a family relationship with the gender
It does,
side
really.
of things.
It's
So
different thinking, and neurodiversity simply means differences of brain. Neuro being to do with the brain, as you rightly pointed out earlier, and it's sort of a catch-all, but it covers the conditions that are often invisible to other colleagues. Things like autism, or people on autistic spectrum disorder, Asperger's syndrome, Tourette syndrome.
we've got a choice here of path, and so steps, and instinctively I like to stay on the flats.
Let's stay on the flats.
But I interrupted you. Carry on,
Not
please.
at all. Tourette syndrome, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and ADHD. So these different things are often been maligned. They've often got very negative reputations or fairly unknown. But it's estimated that somewhere between 10 and 15% of our workforce live daily with these various conditions. Some medicated, some therapy, some not.
Some diagnosed, some not.
Diagnosed, some not. But they create differences in how one thinks and how one processes information, and often how one behaves. And without those being understood, it's really hard to both make your workplace a great place to work for those individuals, to get the best out of them and them to get the best out of their employment, and also to make life frankly comfortable enough for them to want to stay.
and surely also get the best possible value for the company or for the organisation that is employing them. Certainly, speaking from my own experience, I'm greatly relieved that the world, as is the rest of the world, that the world isn't made up of clones of me.
Yes.
Because actually it's the richness of challenge, of different ways of thinking, of things that are sometimes uncomfortable because somebody or a group of people is arriving at an answer or exploring a challenge or a problem or an opportunity with a different mindset. And that can be very valuable to an organisation, having that diversity of approach.
It enriches, because if we imagine a rectangle or a square, and imagine what you know about a problem to be one small circle in the bottom of the rectangle. And if we employ 20 Bernards, as brilliant as 20 Bernards are,
the company would last 2 minutes, if that.
We're going to stack that on top of each other. It's only another viewpoint. If we look for diverse people, somebody who's perhaps an immigrant, first or second generation, somebody perhaps who has a different background and didn't go to university, somebody perhaps who has experienced poverty in a way that you may or may not have done, somebody who's neurodiverse, somebody who's got all these different backgrounds, they're going to approach the problem so differently. You're going to enrich it, because more minds always enrich problems, and 20 similar non-diverse minds that are of high quality will never look at a problem the same way as 3 or 4 people with different viewpoints.
So we started at this through a discussion of the 30% club. Of course you are in a position of authority, of influence within Sopra Steria, so you can influence some of the ways in which these positive changes take place.
Yes.
How do you see, though, there being leverage, positive leverage, to make the positive changes that are implied by what we've discussed?
I think we all have, if you're leading in an organisation, it can drive what your personal values are through the organisation very, very easily. So, for example, a straightforward thing one is doing as you say. So if, for example, one hears gender biased language in a meeting, it's very easy to call it. And it doesn't have to be aggressive, it doesn't have to be a shaming and naming. We all are a product of our backgrounds, and there's some people who find it very hard to change the patterns of language of 30 or 40 or 50 years in some cases. So the friendly, reminding somebody that the word is firefighter, not fireman. It's a small change, it's subtle, but it starts to think, it starts to remove the fact that people shouldn't institutionally be made to feel different from where they are. Of course, there's programs one can put in place. There's streams of work. I run a stream of work in my area that's around empowering women in leadership. It runs across the whole division of aerospace, defence and security in Steria. There's areas of neurodiversity around awareness that we've been running at work. But we've got a really supportive organisation where we're allowed to be different. We're given permission to not be okay at work and have a bad day, and we're given right from the very top the inclusive networks that our CEO has put into place and they've run over years. So there's Women's Inclusive Network for women and allies of our women, LGBTQ network, we have a race and religion network, a disabilities network. So we have places for people to go to feel included and to spread the messages and to put the right things in place and to be inspired by, inspire each other as well.
And of course, with Sopra Steria, you have a multinational organisation headquartered in France, I believe,
Yes.
Covering a number of different jurisdictions and countries, and there will be differences there, some of which allow you to pick up on the positives from France or Sweden or elsewhere, import those into the UK company, and hopefully there'll be some exports as well.
Of course, yeah, and I'm really proud to say that a lot of the good work that John Nielsen, our CEO, is doing in the UK is being exported. Particularly around how we look after our people and being the great place to work. It's a scheme, but it's a genuine thing. A lot of people come here and stay for a really long time because it is a place that really looks after people and encourages people to be themselves, be their best, and get the right contribution to try for them. And when you start the approach with you're allowed to be yourself and you be kind to each other, it's really easy after that, because that's the bottom line. It's a human place. We're not units of output, are we? We're humans.
Well,
and we bring ourselves to work where we can.
One of the areas that struck me, again, just doing some research ahead of our meeting up, research into Sopra Steria, was that Sopra Steria is very much a supporter, a strategic partner no less, of the Ben Kinsella Trust, and that there is work that Sopra Steria has done on knife crime in support of the Ben Kinsella Trust. Those that may not know, Ben Kinsella, young man who was killed, who was stabbed to death a number of years ago in London, and so that's an example of where Sopra Steria actually has is looking to provide the support that there might be, so the right thing for society, and looking to support, and so that's something instilled within the company, is it?
So right from the very top, right from our chairman in France, right through the UK, and we have a Tech for Good hub. We have sustainability. We won awards for that. We won awards around the work we've done around environment, around society. So it's a big part of us. We have days off in the year. We can do charity for our local environment, local societies and communities. We have a scheme where if I give hours for a charity, then we can have them backed up by the same, or we raise funds for a charity, the company will back that up with the same amount of cash. So we've got an awful lot of, I suppose, skin in the game is the common phrase, is the modern phrase. I'm not overly a fan of it, but it works well, where we are really embedded in our communities and we try really hard to do the best for the environments we're in and the people around us, as well as the people who work for us.
Now we're coming towards the end of our walk along. So this is now Folkestone Front, and we've lost the yachts. We now have really just the North Sea lapping at the shores here. Further on, around the corner there, is the container port of Felixstowe. We're not going to get as far as that.
No. We'll probably stop at an ice cream hut.
Well, I think with an ice cream hut, there's an ice cream or two ice creams calling our name at the moment.
And, for us. Yeah.
So it's become a tradition on these police and friendship tour walks of mine, not only to have the ice cream, which we won't do on film. We might take a photograph of, but to ask about a charity that's close to your heart. And so a little earlier on you were saying the NSPCC, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty for Children. Now, having said that, you might have changed your mind in the last half hour to 3/4 of an hour. But,
I've always been a fan of that. It started actually at a trade exhibition about 5 or 6 years ago, where the NSPCC had a stand opposite the company I was with at the time, and we got talking about some of their work, and particularly with some of our most vulnerable children as victims of crime, and that really, I guess, it touched a nerve.
So prevention of cruelty to children. I might have said something else.
Child victims of crime.
Yes.
Yes, it was child victims of crime. So often clearly as adults we may experience crime directly, but when children are victims of crime, or the children whose parents are victims of crime, whether it's by orphanage or some terrible thing, and the work they do around helping support those children, keeping them either in education, giving them the comforts they need, as well as therapy and all sorts of things, I thought it was a really powerful thing, because of course our children are the most innocent amongst in society, and when something awful happens, it's very easy to forget the real human cost at the level below what's happening. And the thing I really respected about the charity is not just the children who are the victims of crime, it could be the children of the protagonists of the crime, who clearly have no fault in the crime, who's going to care for those and support those. So I thought it was a really powerful message, and it's related to policing too, but it's the support of children in the most vulnerable time, I think, that really appeals to me.
Absolutely, and a wonderful charity to raise their paw. It's been an absolute pleasure walking here along the Folkestone front. We do have that. Where did I say? I said Folkestone. That's no.
You've been to
I've been to lots of
though,
places. No, Felixstowe. I'm glad you put me right. So Felixstowe, neurodiversity. That's the other one I've got to get. I've got to get that one in my head as well. We're going to turn the camera off now. We're going to go and find that ice cream. Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your company.
Thank you for your time.
Cheers now.